Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Servants. Today we will be taking a look at the Heian era general whose fame and exploits were known all throughout the capital city of Kyoto, Minamoto no Yorimitsu, or as we know her in Fate, Raikou. I figured it would be worth covering her four Heavenly Kings as well, two of which we have in FGO so far, those being Sakata Kintoki and Watanabe no Suna. I have already talked on Watanabe no Suna in my Oni of Chaldea video, so I'll be covering anything that I missed there, here, and giving a brief overview of what was said there. I would like to remind you all that this is all millennia's old history, so the details are a little bit light, however I will do my best to put their stories together for you all now. Also, because this is a gender bend episode, we get to play the ever fun game of checking to see if my writing is up to snuff. By that I mean we get to see if I have any misspellings of me saying she or her as opposed to he and him, as Raikou historically is a male, or has my mind been completely corrupted by RAITA's ability to draw huge anime titties. So, if I slip up at any point, feel free to make fun of me in the comments. Starting off strong with Raikou, we don't even know when his exact birthday or birthplace is. It is widely accepted that he was born in the year 948, but other sources indicate that he may have been born on August 30th of 954. He was the eldest son of Shogun Minamoto no Mitsunaka. As such, he would grow up to become the third head of the Seiwa Genji. Given that his father was a shogun of the Chinju Shufu, he was of course raised in wealth. Well, at least middle-class wealth. His family was well connected with the people in power, and Raikou was raised to be a warrior and a governor. We honestly do not know much about the details of his youth, but this is a good time to address something unique about his design in Fate. As mentioned prior, it is painfully obvious from looking at her, Raikou in Fate is a gender bend. Fate explains this as her being possessed by the spirit of Ushi-Gozen, a powerful Oni or evil spirit. Her father supposedly abandoned her for both this and for being a woman, regretting that she was not a male. However, she managed to survive and proved to be a military genius, so her father took her back in, deciding to raise her as a male. With how little we know about her early life, this borders on the realm of possibility. However, this is a stance I stand by. Japan has never been shy about exalting its female warriors. While women were viewed as weaker and less capable, if one could prove herself a worthy warrior, they would not alter the historical record. Take Tomoe Gozen and Hangaku Gozen of the Genpei War. Same goes for Kagetora, who does have some historical potential for being a woman, but that's a story for another time. Raikou would join governmental work at the age of 20, as was expected of people of his social status and class. He would end up acquiring a good reputation and wealth by serving the Fujiwara clan, who worked directly for the emperor. When the imperial prince Okisada became the crown prince, Raikou was assigned as one of his advisors. This all occurred around the year 986. This is a huge move upward for Raikou, as Okisada would eventually become the emperor, known as Emperor Sanjo. He would later be assigned as a governor of the Baizen province in 992, though he remained in the capital during his tenure. 2 years earlier, he would attend the funeral of Emperor Michinaga's chief advisor, Kanei. The way Michinaga carried himself throughout this occasion apparently inspired Raikou, who would later join his ranks as an advisor. He would continue to rise through the ranks of government until he became a Zuryo, which is essentially the head of all provisional governors in an area. He played a large part in the rise of Michinaga's influence in Japan, which laid the groundwork for the eventual rise of the Genji clan. I just want to point this out. In writing these last few scripts between Tamamo, Raikou, Sei, Murasaki, and the Oni, Emperor Michinaga appears a lot. Mind you, these stories all take place around the same time, but the level of influence he exudes is not something to be ignored. It is surprising to me that he is yet to be added as a servant, even though I know he has an official design. Sorry, side tangent there. Raikou was notorious for quelling the bandit problem that was occurring around the Heian area. Much of these stories have been translated him slaying Oni, such as the slaying of Shuten Doji. For his efforts, Raikou would become known as the protector of the imperial family, and he would pass away between the ages of 68 and 74. The cause of death is unknown. But that's the factual, more mundane life of Raikou. However, they are a legendary figure not for being a politician or local governor. Instead, he is known for the various tales of his monster slaying, and even more so the adoption of Sakata Kintoki. Let's do these in a semi-chronological order, because realistically it's hard to find accurate records of which of these legends occurred first. So we will start with Raikou's slaying of the Tsuchigumo. There are two tales about this, both of which I'll read to you now. They come from the fabulous yokai.com, and I'm fairly certain I've read the first one before, but that's alright, let us begin. The accounts of legendary warrior Minamoto no Yorimitsu contain numerous encounters with Tsuchigumo. In one, a Tsuchigumo changed itself into a servant boy to administer venom in the form of medicine to the famed warrior. When his wounds were not healing and the medicine didn't seem to be working, Yorimitsu suspected foul play. He slashed his sword at the boy, who then fled into the forest. The attack broke the powerful illusion which the spider had laid on Yorimitsu, and he found that he had been covered in spider webs. Yorimitsu and his retainers followed the trail of spider's blood into the mountains, where they discovered a gigantic monstrous arachnid dead from the wound that Yorimitsu had inflicted upon it. In another legend, a Tsuchigumo took the form of a beautiful warrior woman and led an army of yokai against Japan. Yorimitsu and his men met the yokai on the battlefield. With his experience in such matters, Yorimitsu attacked the woman general first. The blow struck, her army vanished, it was all merely an illusion. The warrior followed the woman to a cave in the mountain, where she morphed into a giant spider. With one swing of his sword, Yorimitsu sliced her abdomen open. Thousands of baby spiders the size of human infants swarmed out of her belly. Yorimitsu and his retainers slew every one of the spiders and then returned home victorious. Next, we have the discovery of Kintoki, commonly known as Kintaro in Japan. He is something of a Japanese folk hero and a great source for art of a massive baby man wrestling animals if that's your thing. For the sake of consistency with fate, I'll be calling him Kintoki. There are several variations as to how Kintoki wound up in the mountains, but the most common is that he was left to die on the mountains by his mother who could not raise him, where he was discovered by a Yama-uba, or a mountain witch, and raised as her own. A variation on this that is worth mentioning is that instead the Yama-uba is his mother, who is impregnated by a clap of thunder created by a red mountain dragon, hence his association with thunder and lightning. Being alone on the mountain, he had no children to play with, so his playmates were the forest animals. It is even said that he learned how to speak their language. He had exceptional strength and would put on sumo matches against the forest animals. He's also known for helping others who wandered into the mountains to search for lumber, assisting them in chopping wood. He would be discovered by Raikou and Watanabe no Suna, who had been sent to the mountain to slay the Yama-uba. See, I neglected to mention that the Yama-uba are man-eaters, taking the form of beautiful women to allow travelers to rest at their huts, and then shifting back into the form of an old hag where they would consume them. Why one decided to raise a child if it were abandoned is beyond me, thus lending credence to him being the son of one. But as Raikou and Suna discovered the Yama-uba's hut, Kintoki approached them. Likely marveled by their appearance as warriors, he requested that they take him with them, where he would serve as one of Raikou's retainers. By this point, he was an adult. They accepted this proposition, and thus Kintoki joined their party. So this is actually quite interesting to think about outside of the folkloric context. Raikou, Suna, and Kintoki were all real people, as well as the rest of her heavenly retainers. This is the story that they presented to explain how they discovered Kintoki. Couple this with the fact that they were dispatched to find a real mountain cannibal. The actual factual credence to him being raised by an old woman is really strong because he is able to understand language, and children raised by animals cannot communicate if they did not learn how to before a certain age. Regardless, we are one Kintoki stronger. Let's very briefly talk about Raikou's other three retainers as well. Watanabe no Suna is a legendary figure who I have already covered in the Oni video, but in brief, he's most well known for his defeating of Ibaraki Doji, slicing off her arm and keeping it as a trophy. She would eventually reclaim the arm, but to defeat a being as powerful as she is no small feat. He's very well known for his slaying of Oni in general, with his sword even being known as Onikiri, translated to Oni Slayer. Fun fact, this sword still exists today and is being held in a museum, though not on display as of the writing of this video. There are two other retainers that do not appear in FGO as of yet, but are more or less guaranteed at some point. They are Urabe no Suetake and Usui Sarimitsu. Starting with Urabe, they are the archer whose bow appears in Raikou's Noble Phantasm. I can't really find too many legends associated with just him, but he is present in many of Raikou's. One that's just about him, though, is that he was crossing a river on horseback, and a woman floating in the river, presumably dying, handed him her child, begging him to take it. He did so and continued to cross the river, only for the woman to begin to scream hysterically, demanding her baby back. Suspecting something amiss, Urabe continued to cross the river. Once he had crossed, the baby transformed into a leaf, suggesting a trick from a tanuki or a kitsune. Usui Sadamitsu is the owner of the polearm that Raikou uses in her Noble Phantasm. Usui is present in other variations of the Tsuchigumo tale, personally defending Raikou. They are also present at the discovery of Kintoki, dressed as a woodcutter to lure out the Yama-uba in some legends. Fun fact, they are often depicted as a female, so should we get them in Fate as a servant, they would likely be a female. But of course, the most well-known story of Raikou and her retainers collectively is their slaying of the Oni of Mount Oe. It goes as follows. Raikou and her retainers were dispatched by the Emperor to slay the Oni of Mount Oe, as they had begun kidnapping members of the surrounding villages and were likely mounting an assault on Heian. As such, the retainers climbed the mountain to face the mounting threat and save the kidnapped villagers. Along the way, they met traveling priests and informed them of their destination. The priests decided to lend them a hand and disguise themselves as fellow priests. Now, a party of 9, they happened upon an old woman washing bloody clothing in the river. When asked what she was doing so far up in the mountain, she explained that she had been kidnapped from the village by Oni and had been made to work as a slave. She told the group that the Oni tortured and forced the kidnapped people to entertain and work for them, and would kill the villagers and eat them for no apparent reason at all. She then pointed them in the direction of the Oni's lair. The group feigned being priests and asked the leader of the Oni to give them shelter. On what appears to be a whim, the Oni king accepted. He introduced himself as Shuten Doji. He explained that he had planned to take the capital for himself in revenge for being driven from their ancestral home. The group offered Shuten a special wine, which he greedily consumed. It was laced with a paralytic that froze the fearsome beast. Being held down by the priest, Raikou decapitated him. However, Shuten's head merely acted on its own, flying forward to bite off Raikou's in a dying attempt for vengeance. Having suspected such a trick, Raikou had worn multiple helmets and was left unharmed. With the leader dead, the Oni attempted to fight or flee, but ultimately were all exterminated, save for Ibaraki who escaped. The group then returned to the capital with the kidnapped people. Once again, I mentioned this in my Oni video, but it is worth repeating. The likelihood of Oni infesting the mountain is slim. Not impossible, but slim. What likely occurred was a party of bandits had made their home on the mountains and were performing these acts, and Raikou with his retainers were sent to eliminate them. However, I like to believe the story as it is told. There is one more part of Raikou that I believe is worth mentioning. In FGO, there is an event that revolves around her being possessed by Ushi-Gozen. Ushi-Gozen is the child of Gozu Tenin, the ox-headed heavenly king, born of the prayers given to him. Upon Raikou's birth, she and Ushi-Gozen were merged together, essentially creating a ticking time bomb. Should Raikou ever gain too much divine power, Ushi-Gozen will surface, as we see in the event that she appears in. And Ushi-Gozen, or Ushi-Oni, is a type of demonic beast that appears in Western Japan as a malformed ox beast. Strangely, they have an association with water. Ushi meaning cow or ox is the term used in Japan for what we in the West may call the witching hour. Ushi no Toki means the hour of the ox, occurring between 1 and 3 a.m. It is a requirement for various black magic rituals to be performed at this time. What this has to do with Raikou is not a whole lot, but I found it in my research and I thought it was interesting. But that's it! Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. If you would like to request a servant for me to cover, let me know in the comments. Normally I do polls from suggested servants to see who I will cover next. These last few that I've done have just been ones I promised to do a while ago, or that I myself just wanted to cover. We'll get back to the democracy with this soon, I promise. Leave a like as it really does help out the video. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Subscribe to catch these videos as they go up. Follow my Twitch for significantly less structured content. I also have a Twitter, but for now, keep your chin up. Peace.